joining us for his first interview since joining the administration as U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary Scott Bessent. I like the sound of that, Secretary Bessent.
Thank you, Larry.
Welcome.
Good to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it very much. You ever thought about this flap that's developing? I'm hearing about a 5-year, or Edward Lawrence is reporting a 5-year extension, not a 10-year extension, or other flotsam and jetsam that would interfere with the Trump tax cuts?
Larry, look, President Trump has a mandate. He came in to do big things, and one of the big things that this administration wants to do is make the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. And that permanency will continue to make the U.S. the #1 economy in the world in terms of growth. We're going to bring down inflation. We're going to cut regulations, and we are going to get the tax cut. The goal is still for them to be made permanent. And as you just said, that we are going to use current policy scoring. And
great.
The scoring that up until a year ago, I was a civilian. I'd been looking at CBO numbers for 35 years in my day job in the investment business, but I never understood the way this scoring worked. And it is tilted towards spending, and that is why the spending has gotten out of control here in Washington.
And as I understand it, you all, from the president on down, but especially you want to lower spending and lower the tax rates. I mean, and what law says you can't do both? Is there some biblical chapter that says you can't do both? Seems to me it's the right thing to do.
Well, Larry, look, the U.S. doesn't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Right.
And I think we can up the revenues, we can up the growth, and most importantly, President Trump got elected because of this affordability crisis. And as the discussion, as Carolyn Levitt was questioned recently, what is he going to do for the affordability crisis? Real wage growth for working Americans is the best way to fix this. We will contain prices, we will cut regulation, but real wages for hourly workers in the first Trump administration, which you're a key part of, hourly workers' wages, they outdid supervisory wages. And as I've said, Wall Street, where you and I came from, has had it great. Wall Street can continue to do just fine. And now under this administration, it's Main Street's turn.
Let's go back. So now you're the Treasury Secretary. You were a key advisor during the campaign, and you talked about 3-3-3. And Mr. Trump repeated 3-3-3 at a number of occasions. Tell us about 3-3-3. Do you still believe in it? What does it mean? What should people think about?
Larry, I believe, now that I'm in the seat, I believe in it more than ever. And look, we didn't get to the debt and deficit problem overnight. And I noticed that Senator Schumer, who is now screaming about debt and deficits, when it was time to break open the piggy bank during COVID, and we moved from rescue to recovery, and the economy was already recovering, and the Democrats blew out the deficits, and they continued doing it right up until this past year. So as I've come into office, we are going to have the highest deficit to GDP we've ever had when we weren't in a war or a recession. So about 6.7, 6.8% of GDP. So 3-3-3 means over the next few years, by the end of President Trump's term, getting the deficit to GDP down to something with a 3 in front of it, 3.5%. That's our long-term average. I think by cutting regulation, by sending the right signals to the market, we can create 3% plus economic growth. Non-inflationary economic growth, which is, again, what you and the economic team and President Trump did last time. And then the 3 million more barrel equivalents of energy produced by the U.S., produced in the U.S. That I had a meeting with Senator Sullivan from Alaska, and he enjoyed telling me that the Biden administration had sanctioned Alaska more than the Ayatollahs. And part of the big energy agenda is energy dominance and energy security. And I'll tell you that in some of the national security briefings that I've been in recently, a lot of the problems that we're seeing with Iran, with Russia have been these high, not only the high level of the oil prices, but where the oil is coming from. So we're going to get our budget deficit in order, we're going to up growth, and we are going to bring energy production home.
That gets you to about 16 some odd million barrels a day.
Well, no, total. Total liquids. So total liquids, including nat gas, we're at about 21 now, 2021. Yeah. So it'd be about a 15% increase on that base.
Which would hold down inflation and would drop a lot of prices across the board. President Trump talks about this a lot. He has a very energy-centric view of inflation, and it is true. I mean, oil permeates the whole economy, impacts hundreds of consumer goods and various items that we use almost every day. So this would be a tremendous, this might be the way to finally slay Bidenflation.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. And I believe that, as you said, when we talk about food prices, a big component of that is transport. And the inflation, the actual inflation number, only single digits of that is energy. But in terms of consumers' mind, and especially working class Americans, that the energy component for them is one of the surest indicators for long-term inflation expectations. So if we can get gasoline back down, heating the oil back down, then those consumers not only will be saving money, but their optimism for the future will allow them to rebuild their lives that they had to struggle with over the past 4 years.
And so, Mr. Secretary, let's go back, step back a minute. How do you see today's economy right now? Growth, inflation, interest rates. How do you look at it when you speak with the president, more or less? What are you suggesting to him?
Well, Larry, what we've seen is this gigantic government spending that has been fueling the growth. And I've talked about several times on your show during last year, we're reprivatizing the economy. And we are going to have private sector jobs. We're going to do that, obviously, be in the energy sector. We are going to have smart, safe, and sound bank regulation that gets small, medium banks lending again to Main Street. And we're going to bring manufacturing home again. So I think that we've had an economy that's been supported by the government. We are going to slowly torque that back to the private sector. We're going to bring down the government spending, get up the CapEx, and bring good paying jobs home. Because the reason under the Biden administration you haven't gotten real wage growth, the government doesn't give government jobs doesn't give real wage growth because they increase with the inflation level.
So this is basically you want to reprivatize. What you're saying is you want more business investment, and the business investment creates jobs and higher wages. And that was the point of the Trump tax cuts going back 8 years ago when some of us first started working on them. And the thing that drives me crazy, guy, I hate to revisit this, but the CBO stuff and some weird things I'm hearing from some of our Republican friends, the Trump tax cuts didn't produce growth. Yes, they did. Didn't raise wages. Yes, they did. Didn't enhance productivity. Yes, they did. But hang on a second. Didn't raise revenues. Yes, they did. Why are people panicking on Capitol Hill? Why am I hearing 5-year extensions? As you say, the president hasn't said that. Why are we hearing about why are we hearing the tax cuts blow a hole in the budget deficit? I'd say tax hikes would blow a hole in the budget deficit.
Look, if you want to look at an analysis of what's going to blow not only a hole in the budget deficit, in the economy, and in the lifestyles of working class Americans, if we do not get this tax bill done, as I said in my Senate hearings, this is pass-fail for our side of the aisle. And we will have the largest tax hike in history, and that will be on the people on our side who do not try to move this forward.
Yes, sir. Now, Trump critics say he always wants lower interest rates, and he always wants a cheaper dollar. Do you have a riposte to that? Or maybe that's true, or what do you think?
Larry, the president wants lower interest rates. And what he sees, in my talks with him, that he and I are focused on the 10-year Treasury and what is the yield of that. So the purpose of lowering interest rates is to lower interest rates. The Federal Reserve, and I will only talk about what they've done, not what I think they should do from now on. They did a jumbo rate cut, and the 10-year rate went up.
Right.
Now I've seen this year, despite the growth estimates going up, 10 years coming down, because I believe the bond market is recognizing that, as you and I talked about, energy prices will be lower, and we can have non-inflationary growth. We cut the spending, that we cut the size of government, we get more efficiency in government, and we're going to go into a good interest rate cycle.
But Scott Bessent, it seemed like that the president was conditioning lower rates on lower oil prices. That's what it seemed. I didn't see him. I know he's had some Truth Social postings about all this in the Federal Reserve. I didn't see him attacking the Fed so much on an interest rate basis. He attacked them for permitting higher inflation, which turned out not to be transitory. But it seemed like that he really wanted to keep King Dollar. He wanted to keep the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And at the particular moment right now, he wasn't blasting. He wasn't demanding for lower rates unless and until we get the oil prices down. Thoughts?
Look, you're exactly right on his view on the U.S. as a reserve currency. That excellent speech he gave at the Economic Club of New York, you and I were there in August, they explicitly said he wants the U.S. to remain the reserve currency. You and I know that you can be a reserve currency and the price is going to fluctuate based on the market. And as I said, he wants lower rates. He is not calling for the Fed to lower rates. He believes that if we do all the things that you and I have talked about today, if we deregulate the economy, if we get this tax bill done, if we get energy down, then rates will take care of themselves and the dollar will take care of itself.
But he insists on it being the world's reserve currency. I mean, he said he would tariff 100% some of these BRIC countries if they actually went through and created another currency. They haven't yet. But he seems pretty adamant about what I call King Dollar, but what is said keeping the dollar the world's reserve currency.
Yeah, and Larry, I've been in the currency markets for 35 years, and I can tell you there is no alternative to the dollar.
Right.
These other countries can talk about it. They may try to take away our reserve currency status, but there is no other reserve currency on the horizon.
Let's shift gears a bit. Much in the news until today. Much in the news. Tariffs. And Mr. Trump has had actually some success with his tariff threats, although I think he's quite serious, and at some point we'll come back to that, and tariffs will go up, not down. But how do you see, as Treasury Secretary, you're going to be a key player, according to the president, how do you see the tariff strategy right now?
Yeah, I think it's there's several different aspects to the strategy. We saw what happened with Colombia. The president threatened tariffs, and the president of Colombia not only allowed illegal immigrants back into his country, he offered to send his own plane. He threatened tariffs on, or signed an order for tariffs on Mexico and Canada over the weekend. And then on Monday, President of Mexico offered 10,000 troops at the southern border, and Justin Trudeau virtually the same thing. And this is in response to the fentanyl crisis. Also, tariffs on China. And again, this is due to the fentanyl crisis. This is not a revenue issue right now.
Will it become? Mr. Trump seems to be moving. I mean, Steve Miller said this yesterday, but I've heard from President Trump. He seems to want to move the system towards more tariff-related revenues and fewer income tax-related revenues. And universal tariff seems to be out there, whether it's 10 or 20%, I don't know. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Larry, I think tariffs are a means to an end, and I think that end is bringing the manufacturing base back to the U.S. That, in theory, tariffs would be a shrinking ice cube, that you would tariff a country, And then as the production comes back to the U.S., the income tax, the corporate revenues, and the income tax goes up, and the tariff income would go down. The current account deficit goes down. Our trade deficit goes down. So tariffs are a means to an end to reshore, economic security in the U.S.
But he's still concerned about reciprocity and unfair trading practices.
Completely.
Yeah.
And look, we saw several things. Probably the only good thing that I can say about the COVID crisis was it was a test run for what a hot war could look like, a deeper economic war could look like. And we realized that optimal supply chains are not secure supply chains. So, we want to bring back medical supplies. We've got to bring back shipbuilding, things like that. So we know that we have a group of industries that we were very vulnerable during the COVID crisis, that places like China, the most imbalanced economy in the history of the world, most unfair trade practices in the history of the world, were not reliable suppliers. And I point everyone, there's a very good article in the Wall Street Journal today that talks about the China shock and how much worse it was for working Americans than anyone had thought.
We're really interested in an economics article, National Bureau of Economic Research. Very interesting, the China shock. Last one, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It's just in the headlines today. Elon Musk's influence on the Treasury, Doge's influence on the Treasury. You're the Treasury Secretary. What can you tell us about this?
Larry, that Elon Musk is the greatest entrepreneur of this generation, and the Doge, outlook and their brief from the president, the Department of Government Efficiency, and we had the Grace Commission. You and I are old enough to remember.
Yep.
You were in the administration.
Yep.
The Grace Commission in the 80s failed.
Reagan's years.
Yet Bill Clinton, Al Gore set up a commission on government efficiency, failed. And Doge is not going to fail. And that they are moving a lot of people's cheese here in the Capitol. And when you hear this squawking, then some status quo interest is not happy. What I will tell you that at the Treasury, our payment system is not being touched. Everything, we process 1.3 billion payments a year. There's a study being done. Can we have more accountability, more accuracy, more traceability, that the money is going where it is? But in terms of payments being stopped, that is happening upstream at the department level.
All right. Well, essentially, you're saying you're cooperating on this government downsizing with Elon Musk and Doge.
What I'm saying is that at Treasury, our motto is to move deliberately and fix things.
I like that. Okay. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time very much.
Thanks, Larry.
All right, all best of luck on the new position.